Hello, and welcome to the Harvard Alumni for Global Women's Empowerment Expo. Thank you for joining us from all over the world, especially if you're joining us for the first time. Today is GlobalWE's second virtual expo and our fifth overall. My name is Sajid Ashraf, and I am honored to be the president of Harvard GlobalWE. Harvard GlobalWE is a shared interest group, or SIG, of the Harvard Alumni Association. We are dedicated to the empowerment of women through education, dialogue, and connection among individuals working for women's rights and freedoms worldwide. We highlight and raise awareness about issues concerning women's empowerment worldwide, including, but not limited to, education, political rights, freedom from violence, women's health, and economic empowerment. We are thrilled to have our keynote speaker, David Evans, organization representative, and all of you here today to learn more about the wonderful and impactful work Dr. Evans and the organizations are doing to advance women and girls' empowerment around the world. Before I turn it over to GlobalWE Connect Chair, Barbara Moreno-Paschal, who will provide an overview of today's event and introduce our keynote speaker, let me thank you all for joining us and express our deep gratitude to the panelists, organization representatives, GlobalWE Connect team, GlobalWE board members, and all the wonderful volunteers who have made the Expo possible. We are so excited to have everyone here and looking forward to the Expo. Over to you, Barbara.
Thank you, Sajida. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 Expo. My name is Barbara Moreno-Paschal, and I am a board member of GlobalWE and chair of the Connect initiative. The goal of this initiative is to connect members of the Harvard University community and friends with organizations leading the way globally for women's empowerment in health, education, the arts, social services, economic development, entrepreneurship, policy, STEM, and other fields. This year's Expo is a two-part format focusing on organizations leading the way for women's empowerment in education and promoting healthy communities. Today's event is focusing on education, and part 2 on Saturday, April 30th, will focus on healthy communities. Here are some ground rules. First, we ask that we all be respectful of everyone's views today. Second, please note that we are recording today's session and parts of other sessions during the Expo. We will begin the Expo with keynote remarks from Dr. David Evans. Then you will have the opportunity to learn from 10 organizations who work on behalf of women and girls around the world in 2 30-minute sessions for a total of 1 hour. Please feel free to come and go between the different sessions. Each organization will have the opportunity to discuss its work during these sessions and answer your questions. After these 2 sessions, there will be a networking session for 15 minutes, followed by closing remarks and announcements. Before I introduce Dr. Evans, we'll share a quick poll with 3 questions to learn who is here today. So please respond to the poll. The poll should be up. So please respond to the poll and we'll see what the answers are and where everyone's coming from today. I see some answers coming in from the poll, and we're going to close the poll in just a few seconds. So please feel free to get your answers in. We have about half of the people watching the webinar right now. Oh, okay, we're getting close. I'm going to give it about 15 more seconds. So please feel free to answer those questions about where you're coming from today. We're almost there. Okay, I'm going to give it about 10 more seconds. I want to make sure we get everyone in there. All right, I'm going to end the poll now and share the results with everyone so you can see where we're coming from. It looks like we have attendance from Asia, North America. We have people who have attended this expo before, people who have heard about it from our GlobalWE newsletter. And then for many people, this is your first expo, so welcome. We're so glad to have you here. I'm going to stop sharing the poll now, and it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. David Evans as our keynote speaker today. David Evans is a senior fellow with the Center for Global Development, where he researches solutions in education, health, and social safety nets. Previously, Dr. Evans was at the World Bank, where he co-authored the World Development Report 2018, Learning to Realize Education's Promise, coordinated impact evaluation work for sub-Saharan Africa, and managed education projects in Brazil. Dr. Evans' recent research includes girls' education at scale, gender gaps in education, the long view, and what we learn about girls' education from interventions that do not focus on girls. He received a PhD in economics from Harvard University, and you can learn more about his research and read about it at his Twitter at his feed at Dave Evans PhD, and we'll share that in the chat. Dr. Evans, thank you so much for joining us. Now the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that introduction, Barbara, and thank you, Sajida, for those introductory remarks. It is an honor to be here speaking at the 2020 Women's Empowerment Expo. So to get us started thinking about girls' education, I want to take us on a short trip more than a half century into the past and around the world. So let's visit Botswana in 1960 and introduce ourselves to a woman that we meet on the street. She tells us her name is Aisha, a common Botswanan name. And we ask her, Aisha, how many years of education do you have? And Aisha tells us that she didn't get much of a chance to go to school. She went to just a year of grammar school before her parents decided they needed her to help with younger children around the house. They didn't see much point in her getting an education, and the school was far away anyway. So we fast forward now to today, and Aisha's granddaughter is in a very different position. She has stayed in school through middle school. She did a year of high school before dropping out to run her own business. She was in school for almost 8 times as long as her grandmother. If we traveled even further to Sri Lanka, we'd find a similar story. In 1960, we meet a woman named Janani. She went to school for less than 3 years, but today her granddaughter has been to school for 11 years. The expansion of girls' education around the world over the last half century has been nothing short of breathtaking. Women are more educated today than 50 years ago in every single country of the world. It's not just Botswana, it's not just Sri Lanka. It's Haiti and Yemen and Venezuela and Kazakhstan and the United Arab Emirates. In fact, in many countries, women have completely closed the gap with men. In East Asia, Central Asia, and Latin America, young women now complete more years of education than young men do. And while there is still a gap in sub-Saharan African countries and in South Asian countries, that gap has narrowed to less than a year in both regions. So Aisha and Janani, the women we met half a century ago in Botswana and Sri Lanka, might be very surprised by the state of girls' education in the world today. This is good news, and it merits our celebration. But we also can't rest easy. Too many girls around the world still aren't getting the education they need and deserve. Less than half of girls are even finishing elementary school, so primary school, in Burkina Faso, Chad, Mozambique, Guinea, Ethiopia, Mali, Benin, Malawi, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Burundi. In those countries and many more, including Ghana and Angola, less than half of girls are finishing high school. These aren't just low-income countries, these are middle-income countries as well. And lest we think this is only a problem in Africa, less than 40% of girls finish high school in Papua New Guinea, only 50% in Guatemala, and less than 60% finish high school in Honduras and in Cambodia. Now, school isn't just showing up and sitting behind a desk. Beyond years of education, girls around the world aren't learning nearly as much as they need to in school. For example, in Kenya, less than half of girls in 3rd grade can do 2nd grade classwork in math, English, or Kiswahili. In rural India, less than half of girls 14 to 16 years old are able to solve a simple division problem, like 60 divided by 15, and far fewer can solve a word problem. Not all of these poor learning outcomes reflect gender inequality. So in fact, in Kenya, those same 3rd grade girls tend to score better than boys on tests in all but the poorest communities. But regardless of how the boys are doing, these girls aren't receiving the skills they need to transition to empowerment later in life. So We've got some good news, and we've got an unfinished agenda. So what can we do about it? How can we make sure that every girl receives a full quality education around the world? I want to tell you today that it is possible. There are proven policies and programs that countries can implement that dramatically boost the number of girls who enroll in and complete school. It isn't rocket science, and we can get more girls studying rocket science as a result of these interventions. Here are 3 examples of the reasons girls often don't go to school and how countries have overcome those obstacles. First, it's pretty simple. Girls don't go to school because school is too expensive. Sometimes poor families just don't have the money, or if they have a little bit of money, they invest it in their sons. There's a simple solution: make school cheaper. Even when official school fees are eliminated, and most countries, for example, have free elementary school at this point, schools still often require a lot of other expenses from families: uniforms, books, exam fees, the list goes on and on. When countries eliminate fees and provide scholarships, girls complete more school. So for example, in Ghana a few years ago, high school scholarships led to many, many more girls finishing high school, going to college, putting off having their children until they were a little more established and having good jobs. So the first reason that girls don't go to school is because it's too expensive. And the solution is pretty straightforward. Just make school cheaper through scholarships, through eliminating school fees. In the Gambia, they eliminated secondary school fees just for girls because the country as a whole couldn't afford to eliminate secondary school fees for everyone at once. A second reason girls don't go to school is because the schools are too far away. Sometimes this is because travel is too expensive. Sometimes it's because families fear for the safety of their girls as they travel long distances to school. Here's a simple solution: make schools closer. Some of you will remember the old movie line, if you build it, they will come. Well, with girls' education, it's true. A school construction program in the 1970s in Indonesia built over 60,000 schools. More than 4 decades later, not only are women in the target areas more likely to complete elementary school, but their children are also more likely to complete secondary school and even tertiary school. And the effects are even bigger for these women's daughters than they are for their sons. So women's education, building schools that women can access, is an intergenerational educational investment. A third reason that girls don't go to school is because the schooling quality is bad. I read in a study recently that a 13-year-old girl in northern Nigeria said, "I was in school before I stopped going because the school doesn't impact knowledge. I was asked to stop going because I'm wasting my time going there." If girls and their families don't see girls gaining valuable skills from reading and math to science and computers, then they'll stop going to school. But many countries have achieved large-scale improvements in the quality of teaching. Sometimes that means detailed teachers' guides and teacher coaching to help teachers with less education, this dramatically improved literacy for girls as well as for boys in Kenyan schools. Sometimes it means tutors who come in and help kids who are struggling, which led to dramatic learning improvements in Ghana, with especially large improvements for girls. I could go on and on about successful interventions. Making sure that schools had girls' latrines in India boosted girls' enrollment. In Sierra Leone, before the Ebola epidemic a few years ago, some schools set up girls' clubs where girls could just hang out without boys and receive mentoring from older girls. So then, even after schools shut down and girls didn't have access to these clubs anymore, the girls in the communities where these girls' clubs had been set up saw dramatically reduced adolescent pregnancy rates during the Ebola epidemic and dramatically increased re-enrollment rates once schools reopened. So here's the takeaway. The world has made a lot of progress on girls' education, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. We know how to close the gap, but what we need is the political will to put resources into this most promising investment. So now I want to step back from education for a moment and ask, what is all this education for? So girls' education is a human right, and education also helps to accomplish many other things that we care about, right? More educated girls grow up to have children who are better nourished and more likely to survive to adulthood. More education for girls means fewer teen marriages for those girls. These are all great things. But what about economic equality for the girls themselves? Does girls' education translate to better economic opportunity? Often, the answer to that question is yes, but unfortunately, not always. In Kenya, more education led to women being in better jobs. In Uganda, it didn't. In Turkey, more education for girls led to more jobs for women. In Indonesia, it didn't. So why not? While education is crucial, it cannot do all the work on women's economic equality on its own. For women to reap the full economic harvest from a quality education, we need changes to other aspects of society as well. Here are 3 examples. First, we need more childcare. In the vast majority of societies, women carry out most of the childcare. That means that when women have children, they miss out on the opportunity to work in jobs outside the home. Now, every woman is different and different women want different things, but the goal is to make sure that women have the opportunity to work outside the home if they want to, even when they have children. And this means that providing childcare and preschool are crucial to allowing women to work. Some years ago, I worked with the government of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil to see what providing free childcare to women did. Guess what? The kids were better off, and so were the moms. Less stress among moms, more income in the household, and better development outcomes for the children. More care in poor countries is a win-win investment. Second, we need laws that fight discrimination. Right now, 60% of countries lack any policy that mandates equal pay for work of equal value. Women cannot reap the benefits of education if they're paid unfairly. 40% of countries have legal restrictions on women working in some of the same industries as men. Women cannot reap the benefits of education if they can't work in industries that pay the highest salaries. 62% of countries lack any legislation protecting against discrimination in access to credit. Women cannot reap the benefits of education if they can't take out a loan to start a business. So we can lobby for these legislative changes and for laws that prohibit discrimination to be enforced once they're in place. Third, we need to change gender norms. Sometimes laws don't have much of an impact. In recent years, for example, more and more countries have passed laws prohibiting girls under the age of 18 from getting married, or allowing girls who have become pregnant to continue their education. But if norms don't change, then sometimes those laws don't do much. Many of these laws that prohibit underage marriage actually haven't translated to dramatic reductions in the proportion of girls who are getting married younger. Zambia put a policy in place to let girls who become pregnant return to school way back in 1997. But 20 years later, many girls still don't come back. And when you talk to teachers and principals, many of them worry that if these girls come back, they'll set a bad example for other girls. By the way, some analysis that a colleague and I did recently suggests that this is not the case, that allowing girls who become pregnant to return to school does not lead to adolescent pregnancy rates going up. Now, in Ethiopia, another example of a norm is that it's common for men to work in some sectors and women to work in others. Men are much more likely to own tourism businesses and metalworking shops, whereas women are much more likely to own cafes and beauty salons. But women who crossed over into these traditionally male-owned businesses, those women made 80% higher profits than women in traditionally women-owned sectors. The same is true in Uganda, and it's been documented in other countries as well. So what changes these norms about who owns a metalworking shop or a tourism business? How do we get women into those? Role models. The women who owned businesses in male-dominated industries had role models, both male and female. These role models buck gender norms. Often a male or female relative or a member of the community showed the ropes to a woman so that she could get into an industry that was usually dominated by men. So we can facilitate safe, appropriate mentoring relationships between girls and the women and men who are succeeding economically, so that girls can see what that looks like before they ever enter the job market. Many other norms perpetuate unequal gender opportunity, and schools can actually be part of the solution. Among high school students in India recently, a program that simply facilitated regular discussions about gender equality over the course of 2 years led to more gender equal attitudes among both boys and girls, and those attitudes persisted 2 years later. Now, it's possible and necessary to change gender norms if we want to see women reap the benefits of their education. I'll also just advertise that you can read about all of this, the current state of girls' education, how to make it better, and what else we need for it to pay off in a report that Shelby Carvalho and I have led with members of the Center for Global Development education team. That's coming out in a couple of weeks, so keep your eyes open. Let me leave you with a recap and a final thought. First, we have seen enormous strides in girls' education around the world in the last half century, and we should celebrate that. Second, the work is not done. There are still far too many girls who don't even finish elementary school, and even more who don't benefit from high school. Too many who do spend time in school don't learn the skills they need. But we have tools, proven policies and programs that have been implemented at scale that help girls to attend school and to succeed once they've attended. Third, schools can't do it on their own. If we want girls' education to translate to women's economic empowerment, then the girls' education agenda must become much broader. We have to transform our societies. That means passing laws, changing norms, and providing care. Education is the building block upon which girls and then later women build productive and happy lives where they enjoy the payoffs of their hard work in school. And happily, their families and communities enjoy those payoffs as well. The massive improvement in years past is not an excuse for complacency. It is an inspiration. We have the tools. We can use them to make sure that every girl gets an education and every woman gets an equal opportunity. Thank you very much.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Evans. That was amazing. I loved hearing every word of that. And I will take away 3 things: passing laws, changing norms, providing care. I'm definitely going to be left with that. And I can't wait to learn more. I'm sure our colleagues also and people on the line here today can't wait to learn more about your research. Thank you so very much for joining us today and for those insightful remarks. Thank you again.